Hello, today I want to talk about some themes that actually go along with one of my prior videos. A video I made, I guess, 2 videos ago about the global suicide epidemic. And a large reason why that is happening is because there's been a misappropriation by those ruling elite, those in power today, of almost every pillar that serves as a foundation of society today. So there's been a misappropriation of education. There's been a misappropriation of money. There's been a misappropriation of religion. Now, if you don't understand what I'm saying, I'm going to explain exactly what I mean in this video. It's not that education is bad. Of course, education is great, but unfortunately, today the best education almost comes through self-education. It's almost impossible to become educated within the institutional academic system. So again, I'm going to put links below because I've discussed the reasons why this is in so many of my prior videos. So I'm not going to go into it in this video, but I will put references in the links below in this video if you're watching on YouTube. So let's look at other key pillars of society that have been misappropriated by those in power to strip people of key freedoms as well. Due to massive corruption in governments worldwide and also lobbying groups, we have a legal system that's upside down. We have a legal system that actually facilitates crime. It makes crime easier to commit and ensures those that commit the crime, like the bankers all over the world, they ensure that they do not go to jail instead of going to jail. We have technology like smartphones that actually dumbs down people, that regresses our ability as human beings to communicate effectively with one another and instead encourages sociopathic behavior. A lot of society's values are flipped upside down. We have consumerism and this fascination with status and fame and wealth instead of instilling core values in humanity about compassion, about friendship, about family, values that should supersede all those other values of status and material gain. But again, we have values flipped upside down, and that's why, like as I spoke in my last video, we have this growing epidemic of suicide today. So what can we do to get out of this situation? The answer is not as difficult as we may think. It only takes that first step. That first step is difficult, but once you take that first step, then everything else becomes a lot easier. So take a look at this picture. As far as changing our lives, it really is not that difficult. It's like that picture of the one fish that's willing to swim against the current. So society, we are all like fish that are swimming in the same direction. And the current is going this way, and it's not that strong, but it's easy just to keep going with the flow. It's easier to keep going with the flow than turning around and then getting out of the current and going in a different direction. So that's why when kids see some kids bullying another kid, they just join in. It's easier to go with the flow than to stand up and then cause conflict, right? Because what you're going to do by going against the flow is cause some conflict. So a lot of times people just go with the flow. When people gossip, a lot of people don't say anything. They just kind of listen and laugh because it's easier to go with the flow. But how is any of those actions, bullying, gossiping, how is that making your life better? The answer is it's not making your life better. If it's making your life better because you're bullying and gossiping negatively about someone because you feel better doing that, then that's something you need to look inside yourself, because something is wrong with you if you need to find happiness from putting other people down. So that's something internally that you need to look inside, and still something you can fix. But getting back to my analogy of fish being caught in a current, so you're here with millions and millions of other fish going this way, and it's easy to go that way. But you just don't know, if you just go against the current and you get out of it, that there's a whole different world out there that's a lot better. It's just right there. It just takes a little effort just to get out of that current, and then a whole different world will open up to many people. And that's what a lot of people don't recognize today. And that's why I'm trying to get people to recognize that there is a whole different world out there. So if for example, you're going along this current because all your friends are doing these negative things too, then maybe you need new friends. So you get out of this current, you might feel alone, it might be scary for a while, but you will find people that are inspirational out there and still negative. Who wants negative? If you have a choice between having people in your life that are inspirational versus having people in your life that are negative? Who would choose to surround themselves with negative people? But yet a lot of people do, because it's like staying in that current. It's easy. So you don't want to go against that flow. But if you just go, make an effort to swim out of that current, and then there's a whole bunch of inspirational people out there. Okay, building on this message, I just want to encourage, because I always want to try to educate people again against the immorality of the fractional reserve banking system and the fact that it is just a misanthropic system that hates humanity and does nothing to promote goodness in society. So, but it can be, like I said before, again, it's just the system as it has been constructed today by those in power. It's not that the banking system can't be a force for good, but certainly the way it's been constructed today is not. So I want to just encourage anyone that might be watching this that is in the banking industry to think about, how many exceptional people have I met within banking? How many inspirational people that have I met within the banking industry that I can definitely say, hey, that person has made me a better human being, has made me more compassionate to my fellow human beings, has made me grow as a person, and has made me want to help other people and be part of a community in a positive way. Because when I was in banking, I can't, even though I left banking over a decade ago, I can't think of anyone that I met that was like that. Not one person, even though I was in banking for years. So it's kind of crazy. But yet I met a lot of people that would say to me, on a fairly consistent, regular basis, I would say, hey, I never met anyone like you. So I would always want people to clarify, what does that even mean? I never met anyone like you. And what people would always tell me is that I would think outside the box. They didn't met anyone that, thought like me. So again, it's all about getting out of the current, getting out of your comfort zone, not just going with the flow of the crowd, but actually moving along, fighting that current, and having some independence, having some creativity on your own to do what you know is right or what is your passion in life, and to pursue that versus just staying in a comfort zone that is not good for you, that is not going to help you grow as a human being. So, the funny thing is that if you're in an industry, right, where people aren't thinking out of the box, I know it's kind of cliche, but just meaning, you think differently than most people in the crowd. And ironically, it was the fact that I did think outside the box that allowed me to see the immorality of the industry I was in, and was the reason I left over a decade ago. But that is important to think about. Are you working in an industry where people are inspirational? And if not, then maybe something is sick. Maybe your industry is mentally sick and has mental health problems. So you should think about that. And you should think about that in regard to your personal life too. Are you surrounding yourself with people that are challenging you to become a better person, that are challenging, that are inspirational to you, that inspire you? Because these are all the kinds of people that we need to surround ourselves with to ensure that we survive what is going on now with this economic destruction that central bankers are heaping upon us right now. We need to surround ourselves with positive people, inspirational people, to ensure that we make it through this period okay. Another pillar of society that's been absolutely corrupted is money. And again, it's not that the concept of banking is evil, because in and itself it's pure and it can be used as a force of good and to establish a system whereby it provides a medium of exchange for goods and services and a necessary function for society. And the 1609 Municipal Bank of Amsterdam clearly showed that banking can serve as a positive pillar of society, because for over 100 years, the Municipal Bank of Amsterdam did not rip off its clients as all the major global banks are doing today, did not lie, deceive, and commit fraud against their clients as the top executives of all the global banks are doing today. And they maintained a municipality in which they did not distort market prices of real estate, of stocks, in such an egregious manner as is going on today in many markets, that would create collapse and utter wealth destruction, as probably will happen by the second half of 2014, if not earlier, in a lot of these stock markets and a lot of real estate markets across the world today, because of what the banks are doing. So it's not that banking is evil per se, but it's just that it has been misappropriated. A clear example of this is since 2008, when all of those Wall Street firms collapsed, like Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, Merrill Lynch, the central banks have, for every $1 of positive GDP they produced, they created $18 of debt. So that's a really bad ratio. So people don't understand what that means. Let me break it down for you. The reason the central banks required $18 of debt just to produce $1 positive GDP globally since 2008 is because they have no interest in everyone else getting wealthy. The creation of that massive debt, what it allows them to do is transfer wealth from every sector of society just to themselves. So simply put, that is why they required $18 of debt to create $1 GDP, because in the process they are transferring wealth from everyone else to themselves. A lot of people today are anti-government, and understandably so, but again, it's not that the concept of governance is bad, but it's just that the concept of governance has been misappropriated, because we need a certain level of organization, of a legal system for society to function. But today, governments have just teamed with corporations in a very fascist manner to do everything that is against the interests of the people and for the interests of corporations and executives of those corporations that only benefit a few thousand to the detriment of millions in every country worldwide. What else have they misappropriated? They misappropriated the news. So that's why a lot of people don't understand what's going on with gold and silver prices in 2013. They don't realize that gold and silver is being set up for an explosion in prices higher, because everything is misappropriated with, from unemployment numbers, from inflation statistics, to all the key economic indicators that are perpetually falsified by the bankers that control the media, and then they spread propaganda. So the mainstream media sector today of society might as well be renamed the division of propaganda, because all it does is spread propaganda when it's concerning anything about politics, anything about economics. So you don't really receive any real news. But the good news is that most young people don't use these mainstream sources for news anymore. They go to the internet to get their news. They look at certain YouTube channels to get their news. They obtain their news from blogs and from other sources that provide an alternate view to a highly biased agenda that is controlled within the mainstream media by bankers. So when we look at these pillars of society, like money and banking and the government and religion, certainly in education. Now, these things should be used to liberate people, and at a minimum should be used to give form and function to society, but instead they've been misappropriated by those in power to control and enslave people. So I think we have to be really careful when people rail against these concepts that they're separating. They're able to delineate very clearly, and hopefully I am doing this as well in this video, because I don't want to be at fault for this either. But people need to delineate the corrupted man-made institutions from the conceptual ideas themselves. Okay, so for example, we can recognize that the academic institution of academics is an utter failure as it is implemented worldwide, but we don't want to say that education is bad for a child or for a youngster, because that makes no sense whatsoever. Now, this is how I look at people that slander religion, even though it's just the institution of religion that's been misappropriated by those in power. It would be analogous to someone not ever wanting to educate their kid, just because I think I have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that education, academic institution of education today has been misappropriated by those in power to dumb down kids and to strip children divergent thinking, to turn them into convergent thinkers and those that are obedient to authority. So just because you understand this, that's like, telling your kids, oh, education's stupid, and not trying to educate them in any manner. Who would do that? It is the very analogous situation. I know you're not supposed to talk about certain topics like religion and politics if you really want people to listen to you, but that's the whole point. The people in power have misappropriated things that really should be used to enlighten, to enrich people's lives, instead to enslave people and control people and brainwash people. And anytime you talk about them in a manner that is not within the accepted paradigm, then those in power are always going to slander you, and they're going to get the zombies they created to also slander you and to try to denigrate you in that manner. And also they encourage the weak-minded to ridicule you as well, even when you speak the truth. So in that manner, when I say people have misappropriated religion, and that's why a lot of people listen to atheists out there like Richard Dawkins and Bill Maher out there, who I'll get back to in a minute. So you have like U.S. presidents like George W. Bush that said he spoke to a higher power before he went to war with Iraq, implying that God gave his blessings to go and slaughter millions of Iraqis, including 1.5 million Iraqi children that eventually died. Like, this was God's wish. And you have terrorists on the same hand, radicals of every religion. You have radical Jews, radical Muslims, radical Christians. You have radical Muslims that execute terrorism in the name of Allah, and they'll always say they're doing it in the name of Allah. So these are people that are misappropriating religion and leading people to believe that religion is a bad thing, when certainly I've seen very religious people that are amongst the most humble, most kind, most generous people I know out there. So in the same sense that people slander religion, they're slandering the misappropriation of religion. That's what they're not getting, because these people are not using religion in the purest form for what it's meant to be. So the last thing I want to say about religion is the last way I think a lot of people have misappropriated religion to do immoral, unethical things while in power is the whole concept of original sin. Because when missionaries came to America and they tried to convert Native Americans were really, really befuddled with this whole concept of original sin. They said, how can a newborn baby be born in sin when he's an innocent soul? His soul is just coming into this world and he hasn't committed any sin yet. And then the thing that even confounded them even more was the fact that how can you just do whatever you want that's wrong? How can you murder, rape, steal from people and then just ask for forgiveness as long as you do it before you die, and then you'll go to heaven? They didn't get that concept either. That makes no sense. That's like almost a get out of free jail card that allows people to do terrible things. So that is the way I think this whole concept, which I don't really agree with, but that's what institutional religions will teach, or institutional Christianity will teach, is that as long as you ask for forgiveness before you die, you could be the worst person possible and you'll be forgiven and go to heaven. I think people misappropriate religious teachings, like bankers that do that, or presidents that rain misery upon people through bombs and murder and killing and war, and they say, oh, I can just ask for forgiveness before I die and I'll go to heaven. So they take that and they run with that concept. So that's how I'm talking about how religion has been misappropriated by those in power to do terrible things to other people. That's the same thing as education today. Is the whole reason why people can't understand what I'm saying about religion, because they can't think, because the whole point of education is basically to get people to bow down to authority, to be obedient, not to think, and to accept everything that they are told to accept, and not to question that, and to repeat everything they hear as truth. So why do you think education all around the world, the paradigm is the same? It relies very heavily on repeating something that your professor, your teacher tells you without ever questioning it. So over a period of 18 years, this is going to brainwash people into just repeating what they hear by any figure of authority, whether it's a person on the news spouting propaganda, whether it's the president, whether it's the prime minister of their country. So that's the whole reason why you hear ridiculous arguments about all kinds of topics. And I'm going to discuss a whole bunch of taboo topics here, because that's the whole point. I want to open up people's minds. So when, for instance, I've always heard like Asians say Asians can't be racist, or I've heard Latinos say Latinos can't be racist. I heard blacks say blacks can't be racist because we have no power. Now that is a ridiculous thing. That is just something that some so-called pundit out there said, and these people are just repeating it like zombies, because obviously, okay, we haven't been the dominant culture. You hear this in America a lot. We haven't been the dominant culture, and we're still not the dominant culture. But power is just not about monetary power. So obviously the dominant culture is the white European culture, so they have a lot more power to be racist over us. But there are people, there are blacks, there are Asians, there are people, and there are Latinos in positions of power all over the world that can be racist. That's ridiculous to say you can never be racist. You can only be prejudiced, because you're falling into the gap, the whole, not the gap, but the whole false argument that that those in power want you to just bicker amongst each other instead of uniting under the umbrella of humanity. They want people to focus on the differences in color, to keep bickering about these stupid arguments like this, because, you know, obviously Stan O'Neill, who's the former CEO of Merrill Lynch, black person, obviously he has power. He has power on who's hired in his firm at that time and who's not hired, so he can be racist if he wanted to be. Li Ka-shing is one of the richest men in the world. He's a businessman in Singapore. He has power. He can be racist. Jennifer Lopez in the music industry has a lot of power as a Latino woman, so she can be racist if she wants to be. I'm not saying any of these people are. I'm just saying they can be. So that's a stupid argument that people use because they haven't been taught how to critically think within the education system. In addition, racism just doesn't have to do with the financial subjugation of another race. It can also have to do with emotional subjugation, which is just as powerful as financial subjugation. And certainly, we have many, many instances of bullying all over the world, whether it's in Asia, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in the United States, where children commit suicide because they've been bullied so relentlessly that they get so depressed and so feel so helpless that they kill themselves. So obviously, you know, through racism, there can be a lot of emotional taunting and bullying as well. And the taking of another person's life can be no more exertion of power in the world than that one form of emotional bullying. So these are just ways, again, I am going through a lot of these examples because I want to show you how people do not use their brains, because the academic system has stripped people of the ability to actually form original creative thoughts by themselves. They need someone else, a talking head on TV, or someone in the mass media telling them what to think, and that is just ludicrous. We have to break this cycle of mental illness, because it is a mental illness, the inability of people to think. So I wanted to get back to Bill Maher and Richard Dawkins, who are two renowned atheists who convince a lot of people that there is no God, and they ridicule the existence of God a lot of times. And their argument is basically based upon the fact that they say there's no scientific proof that God exists. However, if everyone had been taught how to critically think and had been given the groundwork for logic in their education, then they could see the fallacies of these arguments, because just because something cannot be proven to be true does not mean it is not true. So in other words, there's a lot of things in life that cannot be proven scientifically, but yet people still believe in them and they don't ridicule those beliefs. For example, basically everyone now, even atheists, believe that humans have souls and you have a spirit, but yet there's no scientific proof for a spirit. In the same hand, which is really, really interesting when you think about it, is that because scientists will say that the universe is infinite, that it very, very, very highly likely that there's other forms of intelligent life out there. But yet, these same people that deny the existence of a higher being out there will say that there's no higher being out there because of the fact that there's no scientific proof. But I've heard some of these people also say that from a scientific standpoint, it's probably likely that there's other intelligent life forms in the universe. Stephen Hawking is a perfect example because he's a renowned atheist too. But yeah, he says because there's no scientific proof of God, I don't believe in God. But there's no scientific proof of aliens. But it's probably highly likely there's aliens out there. So you could destroy these people's arguments, and they're highly flawed from just the standpoint of logic. If everyone were actually taught how to counter a lot of propaganda that's being put out there. So there's a tendency, because a lot of us haven't been given the foundation to critically think, there's a tendency of us as humans to basically discount, discredit, ridicule the things that we cannot understand, rather than taking the approach of let's do some more research to try to understand this. Even from the existence of God, is there a God or is there not a God? I would say there is scientific proof, because look at the golden ratio. Now this is a ratio, 1.161803339, that occurs in nature over and over and over and over again. So it would be kind of ridiculous to say it's just a coincidence. And if you don't know what the golden ratio is, just look it up. There's other great archaeological feats like the Great Pyramids, where there's 2.3 million stones, most of which weigh several tons. People still don't know today how they were built. And what happens with a lot of archaeologists that are basically academics, they try to slot something they can't understand into a preconceived notion that they have of how humanity developed through time. So in other words, for the Sphinx is another great archaeological feat that, because a lot of archaeologists don't understand, they say, hey, this thing was built about 3,500 years ago. So, but yet there's evidence of water erosion on the Sphinx that might date it to about 12,000 years ago. But a lot of archaeologists are unwilling, especially the academics, to even consider that, even though the Sphinx has water erosion that dates it back far beyond 3,500 years ago, because they say no civilization 10,000, 11,000, 12,000 years ago had the knowledge to construct the Sphinx. So they just say it's not possible. I'm going to show you just some pictures because this is really fascinating stuff. There's another site in the city of Cusco in Peru, and it is called, let me look it up, Sacsayhuaman. And at Sacsayhuaman, there are these enormous walls that are hundreds of meters long that were built out of giant stones cut in very irregular shapes. But they were put together with no mortar. They're put together so precisely that not even a single blade of grass can fit in between the cracks of these stones. And they were built thousands and thousands of years ago. And the largest stone is 70 tons, 70 tons. So people don't know how they were moved or how they were formed, how ancient civilizations could possibly build it. So when the Spanish conquerors first came to Peru and they saw these massive structures, they said demons built them, because they couldn't explain it. So they said demons built them. And today people still don't understand it. So they said, oh, aliens must have come. And aliens must have built it, because no one has that technology. But what people haven't considered, because it's outside the normal paradigm of thinking, is that maybe intelligence is not linear. Meaning through time, even though time is not really linear either if you look at quantum physics. But if you look at, the fact that people believe that we are much more smarter than people were 300 years ago, and then those people were much smarter than people that lived on Earth 1,000 years ago, and those people were much smarter than people that lived on Earth 10,000 years ago. Why does that have to be? Why does that have to be the accepted paradigm? Maybe these people in Peru that built these massive structures, again, which I'll insert photos so you can see just how awesome an architectural feat, engineering feat this is, that they perhaps were smarter than us and had better technology than us, and somehow through the timeline of history that knowledge was lost, or that knowledge was suppressed and hidden. And people don't want to consider that because of the ego and arrogance, they always want to say, hey, we're smarter than everyone else that lived before us. And that's simply, I would say actually, that sites such as the one in Cusco, Peru, shows, is evidence, is proof that we are not smarter than people that lived before us. So I've actually seen interviews with certain Christians that will say Gandhi is going to hell. I kid you not, even though Gandhi spent his whole life serving humanity, they say he's going to hell because he's not a Christian. It shows an utter incapacity of people to think, because they have fallen victim to the scheme of repetition that is pounded in us through the institutionalized system of academia, where we are just taught to repeat what we are told and not to think. So we can extend that incapacity to think to people who also criticize the gold standard, because they don't actually go look at the facts themselves. They hear some pundit on TV, or they hear someone like a Paul Krugman or a Nouriel Roubini say the gold standard's stupid, it never worked, it never helped to control inflation. But what they don't understand is that because they're just listening to pundits and they just repeat what these pundits say as fact, when in fact it's just propaganda. They don't take the time to understand that the gold standard that these pundits are talking about was a fractional reserve gold standard, first of all, so it wasn't a pure gold standard. And secondly, that the only reason it failed was because bankers committed fraud when on this fractional reserve gold standard. So they didn't even keep the fractional reserve gold standard to the conversion ratios that they were supposed to be for the ounce of gold to the fiat currency. They basically bastardized the system, they lied, and they committed deception, and that's what caused it to fail. So again, it's unbelievable that there's so many distractions that it's so hard to question the paradigm, because if you do, people say you're a moron, you're an idiot, because there's so many zombies that those in power have created, basically by misappropriating everything from religion to education to news to media to politics to music to the arts. So even to sports, when we look at sports, right? I have friends that are sports fanatics that, you know, when I lived in Los Angeles, there's the so-called, they dubbed it the Laker Nation, right? And they're friends of mine that I have that could tell you every single statistic about Kobe, how many points he scored every single game, every important basket he hit, in every playoff game, in every championship series, but yet they don't take the time to understand something that is exponentially more important, like the monetary system and the banking system. They couldn't tell you anything about how it actually works. They might be able to tell you what they've been fraudulently taught by these pundits that those in power have put in place to spread their propaganda, but they won't be able to tell you any of the reality, and that is crazy to me. So I see nothing wrong with watching sports as a diversion, as entertainment, but to spend so much of your life, you can just go to ESPN.com and see, if you go look at some of the comment sections, people spend hours upon hours debating stuff over professional sports, which I basically compare to as a replacement to the gladiator games from the ancient Roman Empire, because Roman emperors would actually they would organize gladiator games when they were running out of favor politically with the mob. So during times when they knew their approval, well, they didn't actually have like approval ratings like we do today, but when they knew that their level of approval amongst the citizens or the mob was falling, they would hold gladiator games as a distraction to entertain everyone. And that's, in effect, what modern sports serves today, because so many people spend so much time just wrapping their lives in this tunnel vision around their favorite sports team that they don't even realize anything about more important topics like modern banking, that is a debt enslavement system. So it's insane, because even in college I had a good friend that he would say to me that his whole week was ruined because I went to college at Philly if the Eagles lost. the Eagles lost on Sunday, that would ruin the rest of his entire week. And he was a brilliant kid. He majored in biochemistry. But I have no doubt if these gladiator games have continued to distract him, that he probably does not understand a lot of realities about the world today. But as we grow up and as we mature, a lot of us understand these things and then spend less and less time being distracted, because that's what the news wants. The news doesn't give you any real news. So if all you do is source your news from any mainstream distribution channel, I can guarantee you that what you believe to be true is almost 100% polar opposite of what is true, because the news that is passed off as news by mainstream media today is Justin Bieber going to a brothel in Brazil, or Miley Cyrus twerking at the VMA Awards. So these are the things that are that the mainstream media propagates and proliferates out there, so everybody knows about, but yet they don't really report any real news at all. It's just the news is, again, it's a distraction, just like gladiator games. So thanks again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe below. Please also comment below, because we need to start dialogue amongst us, and dialogue actually will spread understanding. Because I know a lot of people don't comment because of all the stories about NSA spying going on out there. So a lot of people are fearful. Oh, if I comment, I'm going to get on some blacklist and the government's going to come after me and bankers are going to come after me. But that's what they want you to do. They want you to remain silent, because they rule us by fear. So you can't be fearful. So please comment below, because if everyone rises up, if everyone is not afraid to speak, because right now I feel the way it is even though I'm very, very hopeful and optimistic for positive change and for a new paradigm to come around where good people that want the best for humanity will rule the world, and the misanthropic people that are ruling the world today in the form of banking and politics will cease to exist and will go away, and hopefully will be put in jail for a very long time. That will not happen as long as everyone is silent. People need to stand up, because if everybody stands up, remember, we have the numbers. There's 7 billion of us. There's only a few thousand of them. So what are they going to do? Are they going to try to really wage war against 7 billion people? A few thousand people will lose. Trust me. So don't be afraid. Please don't be afraid. Speak up, spread the word, and this is how we raise the consciousness of humanity. I actually want to let you know, because this topic is so important, there will actually be a part 2 to this series, which I'll be releasing in just a couple days. So if you want to receive news of when part 2 comes out, please do subscribe below. Okay, so thanks for watching again. Please take a step every day to make yourself a better person, and as always, remain intensely curious. Thanks for watching.